Now let's discuss the overall structure of this series. I am a Naruto fan, and so I have categorized this series in 3 parts. First is the genuine part. Here we are going to learn about the basics and fundamentals of Linux. We are going to learn how to navigate through files and directories, how to create files, how to manipulate files, and in general, how to use Linux. Once we are comfortable with the basics part, we would proceed to the tuning or the intermediate part of this series. Here we are going to discuss more involved concepts like services and process management and using the VIM editor and bash scripting, networking commands. Once we are confident with our Linux skills, we would proceed to the tuning part of this series where we are going to discuss advanced concepts like privilege escalation, reverse shell, and some more Linux security concepts that are much more involved and that require a basic and intermediate level understanding of the Linux operating system in general. So, after completing this series, I assure you, you would be a master of the Linux and you would feel like a Johnny Ninja. In the genuine part or the basics part, first of all, we are going to cover the installation of Ubuntu Linux. So there are 2 ways to install Ubuntu. First is a dual boot mode. So depending upon the operating system you are already using, I would assume you are using Windows right now. So we have to create a boot partition for Linux system, but we are not going to cover that in this series. I would provide link in the description to go along and install the Linux in dual boot mode. We are going to cover installation of Linux in VirtualBox. Then once we have set up our Linux, we will go through a basic understanding of Linux, like how to interact with it using the graphical user interface and what is some Linux philosophy, what are daemons, what are directories, file structure in Linux. And then we would go through the Linux architecture in general. So here we are developing a basic understanding about the Linux operating system. Then we would proceed to learning the Linux file system and we would understand how the file structure is divided in Linux. And this is very essential for us to understand because once we know the file structure, we would be very efficient at navigating it. Then comes the most powerful component of Linux, which is the Linux shell or the terminal. This is the part where you would reside in the whole time, the most of your time in Linux. It would provide you a lot of power and a lot of flexibility to interact with Linux. We would be discussing various shell commands and properties that would be required in the latter stages. Then we will discuss how to manage file and how to manipulate file in Linux. Here we would discuss about how to create a file or directory, how to delete it, or how to manipulate an already existing file or directory. After that, we would discuss about the permissions and ownerships. This is more important part of Linux because the whole Linux administration part depends on this. After that, we would learn package management. We will learn how to install, how to remove or modify packages inside Linux. Then we will learn different ways of manipulating file. Also, it would include a demo of using the VIM editor. So you would get a glimpse of how powerful it is. Then we would cover the input-output redirection. After that, we would start with a very interesting topic of filtering. We would learn about various commands like grep, awk, sed, head, tail. So using these commands, we can actually filter our output. After that, we are going to learn a very interesting topic called piping. Using piping, we can chain different commands. Using piping, we can chain different commands and we can really increase our efficiency like that. Now it's time to test everything that we have learned in this series. You would be given a problem statement that you would have to solve using all the skills that you acquired in this part of the series. Once you complete it, you would become a Jonin and you can proceed to the intermediate part of the series. I am very excited to see you follow along in this series and let's have a lot of fun while learning. Thank you and I will see you in the next video.